Hello everybody, Noway here. So today I don't have a magic video per se, but I do have some art, 15 pieces of art that I'd like to share with you today. So please join me for this art exploration, and I'll see you over on the other side. This piece was created as a movie poster, a summer blockbuster, featuring Moxie as the central villain and Storybook as an underground hacker. The theme heavily leans toward a cyberpunk aesthetic, and it showcases a small assortment of side characters that seem to be working in tandem with the hacker to overthrow the corrupt system. I made this piece after first making a lot of other cat pieces, but for months I'd only created the sketch without adding in any actual color. It would be a few more months before I actually got the coloring done after doing the ink. So Moxie, as the super duper evil overlord that dominates the background, is made up of a fiery facial fur, which complements the green hood worn by Storybook. Her face and body are dark, which obscures her facial features. She's perpetually in the darkness as she hides away from the ever-present cyborg eye of the villain. This piece just started out as a collection of lines. I reused a stippling pattern that I had from another piece, and I made it into a strip of dots here. I wanted to do a somewhat symmetrical design on either side of the center cone shape, and I ended up with these weird oven mitt things. My favorite part is how the green liquid lines in the cone shape seem to crawl across the surface as they fill the area. It just felt really organic, and I just really like that. This piece was made using an old bleed page, and looked very different from what it ultimately turned out like in this iteration. I started with the background this time, filling up the space with liquid lines and coloring in the background. I added in the reflection on the bottom of the piece, and then filled in the character in the center. The figure feels really forlorn and alone, shadowed by the city and surrounded by the drowned town. This was another bleed piece to start, but the final piece came out much simpler than what the original had been. Only 3 major areas are really apparent: the audaciously bright background, the strange horn or spike rising out of the ground with a figure at the top, and the frame of the piece, where a dark doorway has sigils or runes that glow around the rim. There are so many strange and mysterious elements going on that I always wonder what the real story is. This was yet another bleed piece that I started with, though it was pretty much changed from the original. Some parts are completely gone, while other sections are largely untouched aside from some new coloring. The background of the picture heavily used stencils to achieve the clean, rounded lines. The strange red skull in the center of the piece feels very foreboding, and the image of the city evokes ideas of a hunter searching for their prey while hiding invisibly in the shadows. This was one of the earliest landscapes that I've consciously done. I've made some very abstract landscapes in the past, but I wanted to use the grid method in order to get it as close as I could to the original photo. This was an old house I lived at with my partner V, the gritty artist. I really loved the perspective that she got on the photo, and I tried to translate it with a little bit of audacious coloring and some extra careful details. I found that the sofa was my favorite part, since the lighting makes it feel very abstract, but overall everything was really fun to color in. I especially love getting those little details in the background, the pictures, the blinds, the counters as much as I can. It's just that stuff's all pretty great. I wanted to continue doing still lifes after working on a few landscapes, so I tried to tackle this really unusual looking skull. We set it up in a little photo booth that we put together, and because the skull's so dark, it was really difficult initially. I had to try to map the lines of the skull out, and that can be a big challenge. But I enjoyed working with the weird shape, and I just love that cat candle. This landscape was a 2-story condo with a really interesting view from the top of the stairs. I wanted to continue with the tight lines that I did from the House of the Blue Columns, so I decided to go with green lines to make up the nearest wall, while the rest of the downstairs walls are dark purple. I used the dark purple because of its cool color qualities, which makes it feel more sunken back than it would if it were a bright warm color. I spent some extra time getting the little details solidified, like the pictures by the piano, and the contents of the shelves in the kitchen. The sketch for this piece is largely based on a piece by V, the Gritty artist, who created a beautiful abstract painting. Ever since she made it, I'd always planned to make my own version of it. When she decided to create new versions of it, I decided it was time to start my own, and I was able to replicate it pretty closely to the original, while still changing certain elements and adding my own particular abstract flair to it. I changed the orientation, changed some coloring, and just made it all together my own. The story's simple. This one poor little alien guy, he's late to the invasion, and they've already taken off without him. That's just the life, isn't it? I took extra time to try to get the alien guy just right, even using a program to create the specific running pose I wanted, so I could work it into the final product. In my continuing pursuit to create more landscapes, in the hope that it will increase my personal skill, I decided to recreate this picture of a laundromat. With so many weird angles and shapes to contend with, it was definitely a worthwhile challenge. I decided to keep the coloring simple so the eye could be pulled down the aisle without too much strain. I felt very satisfied with relatively few colors that ended up in the final. Here was a different kind of piece for me to make. Story's the subject of this piece, but she's so far away that she seems almost to blend into her surroundings. This felt really indicative of her personality though, which is one reason I wanted to recreate it. The final piece was actually comprised of 2 different pictures being composited together. One was used for the center framing of the scene, and the other was a very finely detailed photo of Story in her tucked away position, but with a more out of focus foreground. The best parts are definitely her little raccoon eyes peering out from the pile of fluff that's her body. She's all eyes. This piece I did for 2 reasons. First, I wanted a better and more up-to-date picture of Moxie. The last Moxie I did was from 2018, and it was way more abstract, making her look like she was trying to cosplay as Hypnotoad or something. Secondly, I wanted to recreate the background. I've always admired pieces that took the time to nail the background elements. This gave me a chance to flex my art muscles, and also a chance to practice the correct proportions to make everything look just right. Her face ended up coming out a little long, but she really does look that serious in real life. This was based on the first picture I ever took with Story before she was actually my cat. This was from 2017, and even back then, she and I felt really comfortable around each other, surprisingly. Story has such a dynamic face that it really left an impression on me, and drawing it is a lot easier because of that. Her intense eyes and stoic face definitely felt like they matched my own temperament. She has a lot of anxiety, but she's becoming much more relaxed as time goes on. So this is a picture of my good friend Thomas and his adorable cat. I hadn't had much practice with faces at the time, but I thought this picture would be a really good challenge for that. Facial proportions are always tricky, but once I started filling in more of the details, everything just kind of fell into place, and ultimately I came away pretty satisfied with the final result. Plus that cat is really cute. Since I'd spent some time figuring out how to draw people and cats, I went for something a little bit more complicated. V and Moxie are busy surfing the internet looking for good deals on paint. V's a big fan of paint and all things paint related, so it's not an unusual sight to see many different tubes of color and paintbrushes around her work area. Also Moxie. But Moxie's always around, sitting on things she shouldn't be and looking for all the attention. And there is the final picture. V came out a little bit yellow. She sort of looks like a Simpsons character now, but she said she loved it. She loves the Simpsons show, so glad that she liked it so much. And that's it. I'm so glad that you could join me today, and I hope that you'll come back next time for more. Thank you for watching.